Another book, another free 5-star hero. Book 3 begins with the introduction of Hel as well as her daughter Air. Hel tells Air to sneak into the Order of Heroes to strike them down when the time is right, and since we're such nice people, we allow Air to defect to our side, or so it may seem. While there is a ton of questions regarding Air and her true allegiances in the story, everyone can obtain a free 5-star copy of her just by completing the first chapter of Book 3. Let's discuss how Air works as a unit because she has quite a few new abilities. First off, we need to recognize that Air is part of a very small group of unit types. She is a flying colorless dagger unit and we only have one other flying dagger user. For most players, I suspect Air will be their first unit of this type, so in terms of exclusivity, Air is already very unique. Her neutral 5-star stats come at 35 HP, 32 attack, 37 speed, 14 defense, and 31 resistance. She has a pretty good offensive stat line with 32 attack and a fantastic 37 base speed. Air will have a ton of success if she is allowed to free fire from the skies. In terms of defense, Air is very fragile against physical damage. 35 HP and 14 defense only gives Air 49 physical bulk, which is not good. Since she is colorless, any unit who reaches 49 attack and does physical damage will be able to take her out in one shot. In today's game, 49 attack is not very hard to surpass, so you pretty much cannot let Air take more than 2 hits max. Luckily, her magical bulk is much better at 66 total. Air will be able to duel magical damage dealers, and that includes the very powerful dragons as well as high damage staff users. This is thanks to one of her new skills, which we will talk about later. Just from stats alone, Air can be a good damage dealer and she can tackle magic users if necessary. Air's base kit includes 3 new skills. Lyfjaberg is Air's unique dagger and it has a mountain of text we're going to dissect. Her default special is Iceberg, which is just fine since she has a good base res stat. Air's A skill is Swift Sparrow, granting +4 attack and speed when initiating. As I mentioned, Air will be dealing tons of damage if you let her free fire. Her second new skill is called Mystic Boost, which is actually a new inheritable skill, and I will talk about some potential uses for it on other units. The last new skill is a unique C skill called Sparkling Boost. Similar to Fire Emblem, Air actually does have a working base kit, which means players can pretty much use her right out of the box. If you're looking for an assist skill, I would probably recommend Reposition because flyers are really strong with that ability. Before we talk about Lyfjaberg more, I just want to showcase Air's only other competition currently. Earlier this year we got Spring Kagurdo as the first flying dagger user. You'll notice that the two of them are actually quite similar with good attack and speed stats, terrible defensive bulk, and passable magical bulk. While their stats are comparable, Spring Kagurdo doesn't come with as many unique tools that Air introduces. As we will discuss, Air has some very interesting new skills, starting with her unique dagger. Lyfjaberg is a 14 might dagger that also grants a flat +3 resistance. This brings Air up to a total of 34 res, and that's definitely appreciated. At the start of combat, if Air's HP is 50% or higher, she gains +4 attack and speed during combat. Also, if she initiates combat, the foe cannot make a follow-up attack. Some important things to note is that 50% HP requirement. Air needs to stay healthy to activate Lyfjaberg's effects, and she's going to want those because another +4 attack and speed combined with Swift Sparrow is extremely powerful. That would bring Air's attack up to 40 or 54 with Lyfjaberg's might included. It also puts her at a blazing fast 45 speed when initiating. Air is going to deal a ton of damage to units who have low defense as well as double many units. With flyer mobility, Air can move around the map freely and engage from 2 spaces away, which can be very tough to defend against. The ability to cancel follow-ups is also very nice because of how easy it is to have a guaranteed follow-up effect from a skill these days. Basically, this allows Air to attack into tougher enemies and have her only take 1 hit back if she cannot KO them. For the second part of Lyfjaberg, we have the usual Silver Dagger debuffing effect. After combat, if Air makes an attack, she inflicts a -7 defense and res debuff on the target as well as foes within 2 spaces through their next actions. Also, if a bonus is granted to Air, she takes 4 damage. I've underlined this part because I found it to be worded a bit awkwardly. Specifically, it sounds like it only deals 4 recoil damage if Air has a buff. The term bonus isn't very well defined in this game, but generally it's been used to describe field buffs like hones and fortifies. This does not appear to be the case here. If Air doesn't have a field buff, she still takes 4 damage when she attacks. Thanks to some followers on Twitter, they pointed out that this bonus must be taking into account the +4 attack and speed in combat buff that comes from the weapon itself when Air is above 50% HP. That would appear to be the case, but does this apply to other in-combat buffs Air can get from allies? Will she still take 4 recoil damage if she is under 50% HP and not getting the boost from Lyfjaberg's first effect? I've tested attacking with air when she is under 50% HP and is getting no other in combat or field buffs. As expected, she does not take 4 recoil damage. Now I've tested again, this time air is receiving an attack and speed field buff plus a drive attack and combat buff. From the way the description is worded, air is receiving a bonus, whether that is a field buff or an in combat buff, and she is making an attack, therefore she should take 4 damage after combat. As you can see, this does not happen. My conclusion is that the 4 recoil damage has to be tied to the 50% HP threshold, and in those cases, air is always receiving plus 4 attack and speed from Lyfjaberg. It also appears that the whole part about needing to have a bonus, which is ambiguous already, would seem to be kind of unnecessary. Air doesn't need to have any buffs applied to her, she just has to be above 50% HP and make an attack in a fight. She would then always take 4 recoil damage. At least to me, the wording is kind of confusing. I think it's tough to fit in the description because the recoil damage is tied to both the HP requirement in the first part and it's tied to the make an attack condition of the second part. It's confusing, so just know that if air is above 50% HP and makes an attack, she will take 4 recoil damage after combat. To better understand how Lyfjaberg works for air, we have to take a look at her B skill, Mystic Boost. Mystic Boost disables the foe's skills that calculate damage using the lower of foe's defense or res stat, and it disables skills that calculate damage from staff like other weapons. It also restores 6 HP after combat. So, Mystic Boost cancels 2 big skill effects. The first is what is commonly referred to as adaptive damage, which is a common effect on dragon units. The second skill is Wrathful Staff. Funnily, adaptive damage and Wrathful Staff gained a ton of popularity 1 year ago when Book 2 was introduced with the Weapon Refinery. It only took them a whole year to realize these skills are becoming a problem. Now, the 6 HP healed after combat is a nice touch and actually is the main aspect to Mystic Boost for some use cases. For example, Fury's 6 recoil damage is entirely cancelled out by Mystic Boost. Now, you should also be aware that Mystic Boost is inheritable by any unit. This opens up a ton of possibilities, and while I don't know every great new use, I have a few suggestions. First off, it can be a good skill for units who don't need a specific B skill to function and either want to fight Wrathful Staff healers better, or want the 6 HP recovered after every fight. Now, that first part isn't exactly the best reason, but there are useful cases to get the 6 HP recovery. For example, this effect can stack with the Year 1 Spring weapons. Spring Crom can use the Carrot Axe and Mystic Boost, and after every fight, he gets 10 HP back. I'm not entirely sure how great this would be in arena type situations, but for PvE there are many good scenarios. Let's say Crom has to take attacks from 3 different enemies in one enemy phase. The first one deals a lot of damage to him, but he survives. He heals 10 HP. The next 2 enemies are actually blue units and deal very little damage to Crom. After every fight, he is healing, and this can lead to situations where you are just getting health back from enemies who are suiciding into their deaths. Now, another potential user of Mystic Boost can be ranged units with high res stats. The reason is that Mystic Boost will allow them to once again tank dragon attacks, since it cancels out the adaptive damage effect. Someone like Felicia, who gets absolutely screwed over by adaptive damage, can utilize her high res stat to take a dragon attack if she needs to. I read about a close counter plus Mystic Boost build for Felicia, and that can be an option if you wanted to actually focus on dragon killing. Now, I also bring up Felicia because her plate has adaptive damage, so she actually also gets countered by Mystic Boost. Last, we have units who need to recover from recoil damage to be effective. There are many skills out there that work on HP requirements, and many of them require you to be on high HP. The best example that I've seen people talking about might be Alm. His double line refined falchion is extremely powerful, giving him the brave effect, but only when he is on full HP. To balance this, double line also takes 5 HP from Alm when he uses this effect, so he has to heal up before using it again. While he can use his falchion's built-in renewal effect, that can take an extra turn, whereas with Mystic Boost, Alm is ready to immediately go again. This also ties into another skill Alm can use, which is attack and speed push. I think it's safe to say that the push skills have been abandoned, but if you remember, they grant plus 5 attack and speed when at full HP, but take 1 HP away after combat. I wouldn't say it's an amazing option, but it is an option to run attack and speed push with Mystic Boost. To come back around, how does this relate to Air? Well, Air doesn't necessarily need to run a certain B skill since she is so fast. She wants the ability to reduce damage from Wrathful Staff healers because Air has a good res stat, which means she should take less damage from them anyway. With her good res, she can also fight dragons, and remember that Lyfjaberg cancels out a follow-up, which many dragons depend on, and this is useful if you want to chip away at a dragon even if Air doesn't kill them. Lyfjaberg also has recoil damage, but with Mystic Boost, Air is never going to take recoil damage and she won't drop below 50% HP unless it's damage from an enemy. She might even be able to heal back above 50% HP. Overall, Mystic Boost is extremely useful for Air and she can take advantage from every part of it. Most units won't be doing the same thing. If you have any build ideas with Mystic Boost, please leave a comment because it's a new skill and I'm sure we haven't seen every good use of it so far. We can now move on to Air's unique C skill, Sparkling Boost. In comparison to her two other new skills, this is a fairly straightforward one. At the start of every turn, restore 10 HP to the ally that has been dealt the most damage. Air cannot heal herself, unfortunately. So Sparkling Boost makes Air a makeshift healer, and it's great if you have one main tank soaking up damage. I did some testing and Sparkling Boost can heal multiple allies if they take the same amount of damage. For example, if 2 units take 6 damage, even if they have different HP values, Sparkling Boost will heal both of them. Since Air is a mythic hero and should be used in Aether Raids, this skill can basically cancel out the Bolt Tower or the Bolt Trap. Since they deal 10 damage or however much damage depending on their level, Sparkling Boost will heal all those affected, assuming they don't take more further damage. For the most part, Sparkling Boost may seem like a decent skill. Why wouldn't you want extra healing? Well, the answer is that this can definitely mess up skills that require low HP on a unit, such as Desperation or Brazen skills. For example, if you have a Fury plus Desperation Sweeper on your team, Sparkling Boost is going to heal them and possibly bump them out of Desperation range, which you may not want. Same idea goes for Brazen skills. Just be aware that putting Air on a team might screw up certain builds, so you want to be careful about that. You can of course swap Sparkling Boost for something else if this occurs. It's not a skill that is vital to Air as a unit. The last thing I want to do is mention a few alternative build options for Air. I do think her base kit works very well out of the box, so for most players that saves you a bunch of resources. However, Air is part of a rare unit type, being a flying dagger, so you may want to experiment just because of that. First off, I'll mention the Cloud Myogi dagger, which is only from Hoshiden Festival Valencia, so it's an extremely rare weapon. It's the only dagger effective against dragon units, and remember that Mystic Boost stops adaptive damage. Now you could just give Mystic Boost to Valencia or any other dagger unit as well. Next, I'll mention using a Slime type dagger with the classic Fury plus Desperation combo. The reason is because Desperation can save Air from distant counter threats, as well as just strong dagger enemies or archers. Fury plus Desperation can work with Lyfjaberg, but it's wonky because eventually Air will get pushed below 50% HP and lose the extra attack and speed boost from her weapon. With a Slaying Dagger equipped instead, you might be able to make up for the loss of damage with a special proc. Something to run instead of Sparkling Boost can be Ploy skills. Air has 34 res with Lyfjaberg equipped, which is good enough to run Ploys. She can even run double Ploys with a Sacred Seal if you want. Speaking of Sacred Seals, I think Air will be a decent user of the Heavy Blade Sacred Seal. With Lyfjaberg and Swift Sparrow, she can reach 54 attack, and if Heavy Blade procs, Air will be able to activate Iceberg in one round if she takes a hit and doubles. While 54 attack is pretty good, you probably want some attack buffs on Air for better activation consistency. She would love Hone Flyers. A reminder that she can't use Flashing Blade because for whatever reason, Flyers can't use Flashing Blade. Overall, I would say Air is a cool unit. I think Fjorm proved to be a very useful unit for free-to-play users, and it will be some time before the same can be said of Air. In terms of uniqueness, she definitely has that by being one of 2 Flying Dagger users, although I wouldn't be surprised to see more Flying Dagger users in the future. Air has a ton of player phase damage with Lyfjaberg and Swift Sparrow, combining for plus 8 attack and speed when initiating above 50% HP. She will do well at the start of fights, but her effectiveness drops a little if she loses too much HP. Mystic Boost helps in these cases, and it allows Air to attack into dragons without getting absolutely destroyed by adaptive damage. Air will also be able to fight Wrathful Staff healers better. Her glaring weak spot is definitely physical damage, and she cannot take any damage from archers. Many players might not have ranged flying units yet, so Air can be extremely good for them. At least it provides some options if you're doing your flyer only quest. For the time being, there really isn't a reason not to at least try out Air. I know dagger users still aren't extremely popular in Arena, but Air can shine in Aether Raids, which is what she is made for since she is a mythic hero. I hope this video helped you better understand how Air functions as a unit, and if you have any other tips you want to share about her, please leave a comment. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next video.